So, good afternoon. Who did run this morning? Yeah, nice. Actually, the weather was marvelous. So enjoying Heidelberg and also doing some running and have all these festivities. Thank you, Enno, for bringing me here. I would like to share with you guys my personal experiences that I have been, basically exposed to, or have been have had the privilege to go through, trying to comply cloud computing for pharmaceutical environment. It's quite interesting. Sounds like a contradiction to me. Basically, I have had the privilege of working at an organization which is delivering cloud services to customers. This talk is on a personal note. About me, a few years in the IT, and basically the last 2 years I've been working on this. The idea is that not being a compliance person, as like 10 years, 15 years, but a technical guy starting in compliance, looking at technical controls. So looking at all the factors and variables that make up quality, and from that, hopefully, with the right input, compliance. What I want to do is, and I haven't seen that happen before, is I would like to, what I picked up on a telecommunications GRC project, is use a telco framework to give you the right, let's say, layers to look for the intersection of compliance, security controls, policies, and assurance. So quality for compliance, but with a different insight. That's what I would like to do. And yeah, I see pictures being taken. That's good. So I'll wait one more second. What I'm doing is I did obfuscate a little data here and there. So there's actual testing information that I use day to day. It might look high level, it's not. And also some of the flows I draw, you can commit to paper, and you have a work instruction or a standard operating procedure or anything of that flavor. So, but you will need to make the miles, get some experience, and try to do that. Make cloud computing pharmaceutical compliant, which is not really exactly correctly put, but I'll go into that. Basically, what we want to do is look at the environment, look at the business, and say what kind of regulations are applicable to our business. Do I sell, manufacture, develop drugs in the US, in the EU? What is applicable to us? Following from that, I want to put it in it could be a standard quality management system, but tailored in the end, in detail level for cloud computing. The idea is that in a quality management system, what I will discuss is this goes down to the stack, to the lowest level of quality control. As a technical guy, I will be discussing with you all the detailed configuration items. And of course, for quality management, the people, process, and systems, these are the 3 pillars. So, what is the problem with compliance and computing and compliance per se? There's so much information, you can say, out there that I want to do 2 things. I don't want to duplicate that, and this is not about explaining computer systems validation. This is about what kind of controls can you select to bring your organization forward internally or externally if you are in negotiation or looking for a cloud vendor. So the idea is I will try to look from what we're using, Citrix Cloud Stack, but there's so much, it's very detailed. I will only pinpoint a few items. The problem with compliance is I need everything documented. So you're not always an IT person's friend. The idea is you create the right tests together with them, and then quality is followed by compliance automatically. So basically, this is the high-level agenda. I will skip through it because I already shared lots of that with you. I don't know, is this readable in the back? Is this readable in the back? Yeah? Okay. So the flow, this has never been done, projecting this kind of framework on cloud computing and for the purpose of complying with Pharma. So what I try to do is come up with a flow that says, this is my problem, this is a possible solution, why don't you use this strategy? And then I'll go, and that's the meat of the presentation, I go into the quality management system and the qualification itself. And near the end, I will highlight some components of what I said, Citrix Cloud Stack, and take you to a little assurance travel there. So who can name me a regulator? What's a regulating entity?
There's for certain industry, there's some stuff, but overall, the level of regulations is, say, less than in other countries.
Yeah. So.
But the FDA, I mean, once you do business in the US, the FDA applies to you.
Indeed.
You lay out what FDA is for those who don't know.
Yeah, I'll touch on one of the principles on that from FDA. Basically, especially as a enterprise with different lines of business, or discussing buying cloud compute product from a cloud vendor, you want to discuss what kind of regulations am I exposed to. You want to capture those. Who's the regulated entity in this? So who gets the auditors on the floor in the first instance? Actually, who is accountable for the laws, legislation. What does FDA compliance mean in IT? What I say, because we have had talks about different visions on compliance, and basically what I would like to share with you guys is, let's make sure there's quality, that if you design, you build according to the design, you've tested that, and if there's quality, and there's a level of a watermark of quality you need, there's compliance. Yeah, I'll leave the vendors and how to comply. Scope. Scope is also interesting. It's like with PCI. What is my network that I should make sure is compliant? Which systems, people are in scope? Same here. So how much quality is enough? And what I've seen, the quality that is enough is basically in your own security policy, based on your system classification, based on your risk assessment, for example. Fit for purpose, auditability and traceability. These are very important terms. So fit for purpose is applicable to people, is applicable to systems, carrying the data, processing the data, storing the data, also monitoring your systems. So the system stack that's doing the monitoring, the management, need to be fit for purpose, and everything needs to be like we heard before in other talks, needs to be auditable, needs to be traceable. We like logs also, but there needs to be a purpose. And for the sake of compliance, if there's a sake, so I said quality. Quality is important. With that you assure your services, you can serve your customers, you can do business. What type and how many controls you choose to put in scope of your qualification exercise. Who knows what qualification is? There's a light reaction. Brian, what's qualification? Because I'm dropping terms, but...
Well, it's basically how you back into fit for purpose. It's the process of actually, it's an official process to qualify those elements.
Yes. Let's say to prove quality of certain elements.
The standard that you're going to accept, that if you ever do get audited, will be used.
Yeah, yeah. There's more, but we'll dress that up later. Yeah, thanks. So just taking one step back, the golden question. Who of you guys is exposed to pharmaceutical regulation? Okay, that's also a light response. So again, thanks for joining. This should be informational. So the problem statement, and I already touched on how many controls do you choose to put in your qualification. So quality evidence that you want to show the auditor or show your internal assurance. Same is, how am I going to look at that? How do I assure services? If someone installs a box and he has a test or he has an install script and he might run a test script against that, he checks certain things. What does he check? We don't know. What I'm trying to do here is say, okay, what planes, what layers, and what dimensions, according to an ITU standard, you can try to pinpoint the intersection between quality, testing, compliance. And then it becomes virtual. Interesting. So some solution ideas. Already discussed this a little. Where are you located? Who are you delivering to? Where's the development? Where's the manufacturing? And what I also see is very interesting to close down, especially with nearshoring and offshoring, is the organizational support and where is everybody located. Because all the people, processes and systems need to be assured and quality evidenced. So some strategy ideas. What I also have noticed is if you're working with a third party that is doing some of your service assurance, service delivery, or delivering you boxes, like maybe even a box with a back door or not, how do you assure that things work like intended? Things work auditable and everything. Sometimes there's a very cheap underpinning contract with your third-party vendor, and then you walk up to his door and say, I would like to assure your personnel, so show me their certificates. I would like to see all your processes, procedures, and that they're followed, that you assure that, and have you qualified your systems. That's a bit of a challenge. You will want to do that, otherwise you're not qualified. You haven't evidenced that you're compliant. So what I want to go for is the security framework to identify tests for critical controls, i.e. pieces of evidence that will show the quality of your environment, your pharmaceutical environment. Like you said, Enno, US Food and Drug Administration has put out a few texts that says if you are going to surface development, research, development and manufacturing of food and drugs, you will have to make sure all the records of your quality controls are secured, kept, qualified, and everything. And that's a whole ecosystem that I will go in deeper later. This is all Googleable, so I would like to move, but do interrupt. So, I explained a little about computer systems validation. I mentioned it. I will touch it later. But this is just to give you an overview of what we're going to touch on before we go into the cloud computing qualification itself. Computer systems validation, a quality management system, basically captured in a quality system management system manual. The records, that is basically the paperwork that is basically mirroring every record, every device has a record. So the records in a system, the documents, have to mirror what's actually installed. So all your qualified environment, your devices, will need to have records in your safe disposal, in your record-keeping system. And about qualified people, process systems, actual reporting tools, I already said something. So what I want to deliver you before we go into the actual qualification pieces is, if you specify something that it needs to work, let's say it needs to encrypt, or it needs to spin up a VM, a function needs to spin up a VM, you write that down and you need to test that. If you haven't written it down and you haven't tested it, and you haven't created evidence of that test, you don't have a qualified shop. So you can't run a pharmaceutical environment. This is the validation fee, is a principle you can easily find on the internet. So going into a little more detail, we have the quality management, the quality manual, the procedures for our quality testing. How do I do the quality testing? That's a work instruction. And then you go into the actual records, the dossiers. So a plan describes activities. An operating procedures says the plan does the activities, requirements, and evidence. And the procedure defines the step-by-step basis, so it's one layer lower. Installation qualification, that's also a new term for you guys. It's basically said, I am installing a blade center, a storage box, a switch or a firewall, and I did this and this and this, and I'm putting my signature down. The tests, also for cloud computing, will land in this installation qualification document. The installation qualification document is where we capture mostly the hardware part, the firmware, maybe an IP address, some other configuration, CMDB data. And the operational qualification is where we assure all the, basically the ITIL processes, like, is it working as intended is it forwarding packets, is it storing data, is it monitoring, is it being monitored, is it monitoring, is the CPU healthy, things like that. And optionally, which is in matureness in qualification and quality, is a little higher for us, is performance qualification. It needs a little more intelligent monitoring and all that good stuff. So like I pitched earlier, people that work on pharmaceutical IT environment need to be qualified. So they need to be trained, they need to be fit for purpose from a technical perspective, they need to know the work instructions and the qualification plans and the SOPs, like I said earlier, the steps to get to a quality state, consistent and replicable processes, standardized systems. The idea is, for the processes, it can be a standard ISO process you use and basically more or less upgrade, to curse a little, upgrade to a pharmaceutical process document. And for the standardized systems, you can use your standard either system stack, people are trained on that, they have experience, your monitoring and management stack, like the SNMP, the ICMP, performance management, different protocols. So systems that carry the data and systems that are monitoring that carry the data. They should be standardized because you have to develop test documentation, quality documentation for that. So what I would like to do is go deeper into qualification before we touch cloud computing to link that together. So just to start off, to position where I want to go, is let's see. Let's identify a few cloud components, network systems, applications. How do we do that? And a little tip on automation. You can do a lot of automation. Guys that have written or writing scripts can do that. But we've identified a tool, which is it's more or less a scientific tool that can help you with creating projects, scenarios, and execute that, which is good to use and normalize. Basically, you have a test with such a tool, automation, it's repeatable, it's auditable. Okay. Yeah. Interestingly enough, applying this to cloud, interestingly enough, you need to know where your hardware is. Because if I run an application within computer systems validation, which is basically saying quality and assurance within pharmaceutical compliance, if you run an application or a system, a VM, you will need to know what hardware it runs on. I.e., you need to know what blade, what chassis, what rack, what data center, zone, room, cage it's running. That's interesting. If you buy a VM in the cloud, you don't know it's running. You have no idea. Sometimes they say, yeah, it's US short, or it's EU short, or we might decide and we don't tell you because you pay a low price, or anything like that. So if you go for qualification, taking a step back, if you go for qualification of data center and cloud components yourself, or you ask that a supplier, you will need to know if the data center is physically secure, security, processes, procedures, disaster recovery, security controls will be tested, the qualification itself. You have to really okay, I'm registered today. Who did authorize me? Is there a log? Did you deny someone access? Was there an incident? What happened on that incident? And what I always say, as in some companies, there are real audits. A lot of times, we just look at the evidence that should be already there. We are just assuring the quality that's already there. So we say assessment, we don't say audit. But that's what we do, because they just don't need another audit. Some guys servicing a data center. What you will need to do is come up with tests to make sure the data center is working as intended, including the installation of the hardware. So you walk up to the data center, and if there's lots of holes in the fence, you might want to ask questions. And it might be your own company's data center. You might want to walk up to it, because your auditors will, and they will flag that. Okay, qualification of components. This is basically the real groundwork for the cloud qualification, cloud component qualification. So, where are my good manufacturing or good clinical or good laboratory practices? So, pharmaceutical servicing components, IT components, where are they? Where are my services? Where are my boxes? So you want to look at your CMDB and make sure you have your asset classification in order. That's all best practices. We need those later. You want to identify physical and virtual components, and I have to say, I've been walking up to customers. They say, "Do you do this risk assessment to identify to be qualified component?" Say, if I have two boxes doing something virtual load balanced in the middle, or a quorum process, or anything else, like virtual components, yeah, could be VMs even. How do you identify those? How do you classify or prioritize those? And this is what your business need will dictate. your business need will say, this is a critical gateway. It has a virtual component. I want to make sure it is installed as intended, it is monitored as intended, and we just don't put in the command lines and say it's working because he did it and he's good. That's not how we work in compliance. So we identify those guys. We check on based on the design and the service design, what is the intended usage. This could be a scan physical and virtual. Yeah, we're going to touch on the VMs and some other stuff. Interestingly, qualification, like Brian said already, qualification is something you do normally, hopefully, while installing. An engineer that is installing vCenter for you, according to his installation guidelines or book or anything, should run a few tests to see if we removed a test account or if all the partitions have the right sizes or all details we can come back to later. So is there an original test record or do I have to do retrospective testing? And what I've seen is some of the services or installations are crash installed. So we have to come in later and do retrospective testing and ask very nicely a lot of times about, do you have test records? Is there any test documentation? And et cetera, et cetera. I already said something about the qualification steps. And if something is really wrong and I need this data center to be compliant because I will run pharma services or applications in the very near future, I have to write a deviation, which is basically a sort of exception report saying some of these steps failed or I didn't find this documentation or anything like that. And without too much deviations, and when you're still friends with the IT guys, looking at IT guys from a compliance perspective, you might reach qualified state. Interestingly enough, in qualified state, people start changing things. And when they start changing things, and I have in my installation guide, I put in ESX something, and guys start doing upgrades, my qualified state just went down the drain because on my form there is ESX.something.something, throw in the 5 hash, make sure it is really what it should be. And then the upgrade, I hope through assured change control against the change ticket and all that good stuff, will trigger another change in the records. So if you run this in live, you will need to make sure your change control, your processes, and all that good stuff is working. And let's just say that there is logging. If you look at, for example, vCenter, there's logging. If you look at just taking hard disks out and blades, it's that should go on the change control, even when it's triggered via a fault ticket. Where things go wrong is what happened to the blade. I need a paper saying some guy drilled a lot of holes in it, or any virtual component is depreciated, and did somebody check it's depreciated? Or a piece of storage, did I depreciate it? Did I delete it? How do you assure the piece of storage is deleted? Because if customers that tend to buy at service providers or cloud computing providers are very worried that data swims around in a automated system and is not properly deleted. It's interesting. And yeah, since we're talking about the basically the basics of the qualification, if you decommission a system, you need to archive the record, or you need to have your records. I'll keep going. I think I'll skip this. Yeah. So this is where we really start writing qualification of a piece of equipment. So this is where you start saying, okay, I want to run pharmaceutical applications, services on my system, or I have a customer that's going to do that. Or your supplier is going to do that, and you might want to ask for these documents. Yeah? So you take a blank qualification plan, you select your component category for qualification, which is like networks, storage, and all the good stuff, which is why how we categorize that, because we wrote per category, we wrote specific qualification plans with steps and assurance and all that good stuff. You might want to look up the asset classification because you might want to find the control strength for this asset classification, i.e. like encryption levels and all that good stuff. This is standard security. What I introduce now to you is the ITUX 805. And basically that's a very nice framework. It's a little dusty, but it's a very nice framework that I've been working with a few years ago. And what it gave me is a very nice breakdown of categories that I can choose controls and assess threats and all that good stuff. So I'll go into that later. But that's the security, security side of things. Then I have my service assurance. For the service assurance, especially for the operational qualification, I've seen that FCAPS, which is maybe also a little dusty, works greatly for us. So you can say, okay, what can go wrong? It's my fault. I have some capacity. Let's take out accounting, which is quite important also in compliance. Who had admin access? When? And did he leave the company? Does he still have access? Did I do that centrally or not? So FCAPS, implementing FCAPS controls can tell you that. Yeah, so since we're writing a qualification plan that says, I want to qualify a piece of network, and I'm going to apply security controls and make sure the service is running right via FCAPS. After the qualification plan, I need to write a work instruction. This work instruction will detail detail the steps that basically comprise your installation. And what you want to do is take out the most important ones. I have some examples later. Okay, I already explained this. I say Google. And just also, this is just really basic. Funny enough, things like, yeah, I'm looking at, so there's a LUN hanging. So I'm Mr. VM, I'm grabbing this LUN, and somebody put a watermark on 80%. And it's running up to 85, ticket, solves it. It's IT3 now. All the basics that go wrong in normal IT, go wrong in cloud computing. What do you see? Things fall over. Take over the whole estate. The whole estate falls over. Very interesting. So if there's no isolation, no hardware isolation, and there's cloud computing, and you're like, yeah, we know this. Capacity management, we do this. Performance management, we do this. And it's all standard, and we can do it cheap and lean. You might want to really assure it's working for you. Just as the talk this morning about I don't have enough logs because I delete them. And if you did your asset classification based on your risk assessment, you might identify critical systems. You might want to retain those logs. Otherwise, the security management is just a nice word. So things like that in a virtual environment where, if not properly isolated via controls supplied to you by the manufacturers or yourself, your good design, clustering, your virtual environment, you might want to assure. I've seen things falling that might have survived in the physical world. So I ran through FCAPS quickly, and who has seen X805 more often? If you have followed telco tracks or you have a telco background, Okay.
Just a comment here.
Yeah.
ITU TX 805 was at some point adopted as an ISO standard. It was ISO 18028 group. And that one actually, sorry for jumping.
No, it's okay. Just,
some people might know it under this name, but under another name. So ITU X805 is the same like ISO, which some of you might know as ISO 18028 as network security architecture. It's an ISO world just focused on network security, so some of you should know. And that one is split into 5 pieces. And this is number 2, network security architecture, which I think that might be the name of the series. Which in turn now, from this,
also
it's 27033.
the word framework also flies by. So.
Yeah. But not all parts, not all 5 already, like in early 2014, they haven't transformed this number into this number as they undergo a revision. But in case the organization is somewhat ISO 27000 oriented, you might have been exposed to this one already, just with a different name, the system.
Thanks for the addition. I have to say, having done a GRC project for a telco really in the heart of the business externally, we just downloaded the latest ITU 805 version and started hitting that.
It's especially, I mean, in most telcos, it's known from the ITU name as it was initially Alcatel-Lucent, as I remember, which brought on the table. So the telco world is mostly known under this name, while in the non-telco world, it might be known as from the ISO context.
Yeah, thanks. So what works here is very independent. So this can be applied by anyone. If this is a physical environment, a virtual environment, it can be applied by anyone. You can say I have dimensions, I have my hardware infrastructure, I have a service layer, I have some planes. They really love these planes in the telco environment. I have a control plane, boxes talking to each other. How do you want to harden that? You want to make sure nobody's clear text talking there or anything. Data planes and stuff. So assessing boxes, taking into account your asset classification, looking at these planes, it all comes together. And then the threats is also like, okay, basically you should feed that via your risk assessment, threats to your systems, business, and anything. But it gives you a model to start off from. And this is a piece of text that shouldn't be there. So starting off with these dimensions, there is you know from basic security, you know CIA, and there's a little more in this. I will show an application later. And there's the security planes, and then there's layers. Maybe I mixed up the dimensions and layers the last slide, but this is the correct item. So some IDs. Accounting performance. Some IDs that are basically not unique to the virtual environment. And I already explained that about the FCAPs for the operational qualification, the run phase of things. And basically what I said is what you can do, and I tried that works, but you need to do some writing yourself. You just say, I have a virtual load balancer, or I have a virtual firewall, and how do I do my access control? How do I do authentication if it does L2 VPN or anything, and that sort of, and that would be User access would be, of course, user plane, and management plane would be if I do management from the outside. And then I say, okay, what kind of threats do I have? And I can fill it out. And when I have an intersection, I basically go look for a security control in my policies. So this is how I did that. When I have an intersection, I fill out, okay, what is the threat to this intersection, for example, access control in the user plane and destruction of resources. And then I go for the security controls in my policies that belong to that. I'm switching topics now, going into cloud stack. Any questions? I was hoping that more people would have been exposed to qualification and computer systems validation. That has not been the case. I took a little more time to go through it, but let's go into this then. So, qualification of cloud stack, which is I can safely say it's close to undoable. It's quite a bit of work, and it's a journey. We and I have done some components. You wanna choose what hits you first, what is critical in your business. You wanna isolate and describe, and of course check your design and all that good stuff. So, what we have done, and I'm just demonstrating two things, is I will be testing the standard functionality of a orchestration system, which would be create a user account, create a VM, spin it up, play with some virtual router firewall rules, play a little around with the storage, and also I did something else. So this is more like the top level. That's the top level part of the functionality, and I'm also doing the down level part here, which is basically looking at I'm installing hardware, and I'm also putting a virtual configuration. A configuration on there that's basically creating virtual services and making sure you can install cloud stack, so that the infrastructure is in such a shape with your storage and your infrastructure and your computing that cloud stack can be installed, and it can deliver services northbound to the orchestration layer. So that's the two pieces I will be going through. And this little picture to show that. So these are the two pieces I will do. Let me double check the time. 15. Okay. I don't know what that happened. It's fine. So qualification of Cloud Portal, which is basically the user UI going into your environment. Could be sitting somewhere on the world. If you have something private, it could be in your internal environment. If you're delivering or taking services from a cloud provider, it might be sitting on the internet. So Cloud Portal is the front end, and basically what we're doing via Cloud Portal, we're looking at the core functions. So this is number one, test number one, core functions of the cloud management environment. So what you want to do is what I basically touched on earlier. You want to get your designs, also for the validation story. If audited and in Pharma compliance, you need to tell the full story. So you need to have your requirements, your designs, and your planning, your configuration, your tests, and your documentation. For this qualification flow, you need your designs, your install documentation, selection of the qualified component. Say, for example, the creation of a VM. That's what we're going to qualify. That's sub-process, and you want to write a qualification plan that's basically describing what you're going to do. And you can only describe what you're going to do if you have done that. So then we'll do the application of the two the frameworks, if you will, of the framework and the FCAPS best practice. And Coming out of that would be a work instruction which will say, if you do this, this is the expected behavior, and then blah, 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 blah. So, since you guys haven't been exposed that much to qualification, the idea is, from this qualification plan, you write a work instruction detailing the steps. The installation qualification is the record where you archive, where you document your testing steps and you sign with 2 guys. That is the 4 eyes principle. And for the operational qualification, that's the same thing. And that's also, the templates are quality controlled, version controlled, and all these documents, they go in a quality system, and they're archived, and they're not to be changed. And actually, you need to train people on that. So what I'm saying here is, you are going to qualify something in your cloud environment to deliver pharmaceutical services, let's say. This is the flow you're going to take, yeah? And at the end of that, because I did say people, process, systems, and at the end of that, you will need to train your engineers, other people that are going to assure that, because if they are not trained and you don't have a record of this training, everything they do, if they touch the environment, is not valid. People should be fit for purpose. They should have their VMware paper, and they should have been quality trained on this flow. And you want to go do it. Yeah, so I think it took me 15 minutes to spill the beans. Yeah, 15 minutes minus some seconds. So this is spilling the beans. Basically, what we and I have been writing is, this is where you say, okay, what is expected behavior? What do I want to assure? This is, for example, I take an account, create it, give it permissions, this and that. I do something with the VM, and what I already said earlier. So this is the playbook that we're going to do, work instruction level. This is the installation. This is the installation piece, and this is focused from a user account in CloudStack, a customer account, then a user account, and this is the installation piece, the technical piece. When I go for the operational qualification piece, we have divided it into the second part, in 2 parts. This is the second part of this exercise. We have chosen pipeline pilot, and we have created a scenario that says, you go create a VM, dump me some records, ask the API, do this, do that, and stuff. So this is via the CloudStack API manipulated cloud environment. And every step we take, we grab logging, and what we did as compliance, we looked into vCenter, we looked into storage browsing, or maybe even go into the storage box to watch a volume or a LUN or whatever disappear. So it isn't there anymore. And after we have done that the first time or the second time, we've said, this test we came up with is fit for purpose, it works as intended. Yeah? So a VMware guy telling me, yeah, if I push delete, no. I want to see the volume disappearing. Of course, there's like timers and stuff you might want to go in. I think there's the CloudStack might wait 24 hours before it default deletes a VM or things like that. So you want to go in, record that, and things like that. So this is basically a test that will put you in a position to run pharmaceutical applications on a cloud environment, but it's very small scoped. It's a piece of the cloud environment you assure in order to be compliant or help your customers to conform to the regulators and be compliant. Let us start to get smaller. It's installation, cloud managed things. Yeah, so what I already told you, maybe that's a habit I should be working on. These are the steps we do as assurance, because we get told, yes, I've deleted in Cloud Portal via Cloud Stack, Cloud Management. I have deleted a VM or a LAN, and we go in and actually confirm that. Yeah. So there's some account manipulation, VM manipulation, firewall manipulation, and storage manipulation that we wrote tests for. Yeah, and I already told you Pipeline Pilot is the application we used. It's a scientific application. You can do lots of stuff I really don't know anything about. What we did was just create steps and execute the commands, and it really gave us a good logging and workable solution. It's not in my future work slide even. We are planning to integrate basic things like talking XML to a box and reconfirming that something is created or has disappeared, out of band even. So doing a backup check, things like that. I'm told it's very, very flexible, and you can create projects, and it talks lots of languages, tens of languages, to interact with hardware and interfaces and anything. And this is basically what we created to do this. And other than a little fuzzing in this slide, this is actually what I'm doing to qualify environment. So this is spilling beans, I would say. Yeah, so this is the last piece, and I have 5 minutes. Let me go to the content. I think we did quite some preparation already. So I'll just highlight the differences. The idea is if I say qualified components, I'm not talking about cloud functionality I'm going to qualify, i.e. quality proof for compliance. I'm going for some hardware stuff. And I follow the same flow. So what I've done, and I have not seen it on the internet, because that's in one of my first slides, I said, I Googled, but I didn't find anything. There is nobody that spilled the beans on complying with all the plans and everything. There is lots of stuff. Also, Microsoft is very active with their own virtualization and all that good stuff. The idea is, how do I qualify a service? How do I assure a service? It's a combination of boxes. There is tooling, management and monitoring. There's people. How do I assure that? So I look at the processes. What I did is I made a qualification plan, which is a slice, you can say OC layer, from the hardware up, presenting to the virtual and cloud orchestration layer. So basically, I did a little reverse engineering on the Cloud Stack man page, saying, this is what you need to do with your ESX, with your storage, with your this and this, to make sure I can work. So what are my entry quality criteria? What is my entry quality criteria to make sure Cloud Stack works? I looked at that southbound, and I created this. And it's a bit busy, so I had to stretch that a little. So basically what I did is, okay, I have my ISP feeds. I might have 2 ISP feeds. You want to do, even if you're doing smart stuff with your routers, you might even want to say, okay, I have critical functionality. I want to test that. You want to pull a link or some little RTBH something testing, for example. If you want to be compliant, you might want to assure all the testing. Customer connectivity, it might be an MPLS link, might be internet, if it's like a mix of public-private cloud flavors, anything you want. Management connectivity, also interesting to assure and to make sure it works. And a few other things is like vSphere number X. Things like I pull a design document and a configuration document. I open, with an engineer also, I open a database server, and I say, okay, let me look at your configuration, and it's not the same. Really interesting. So that doesn't put you in a position to assure quality and be compliant. So what you want to do is grab your requirements, grab your design docs and everything, and just sit through it, read it, highlight, isolate the key variables like your service accounts, your sizing, transactional logging. You know, I don't know what you want to do. I'm not a SQL vSphere specialist. And there's lots of security policies that also come flying in. Is this customer environment? Is this third party? Is this internet? So how do I assure, what kind of controls do I put in between? Yeah, of course, I need to build an environment, so I have jump servers, other stuff. I'm actually naming names here, but not really. So these are components I isolated functions from to assure, i.e. quality evidence. And I can go in detail, maybe a little more, because this is basically the end of it. This is basically the end of it. Or questions?
Yeah, Martijn,
Yeah,
I mean,
go ahead, man.
I'm looking at this, and at a very high level, I know FDA is about quality. There's security components in there. And if I look at quality systems and documenting, I mean, I don't know anybody that's going to this kind of level because they want to. I think it would probably be good, and maybe there's some industries where they need quality, other manufacturing. And I see some of these very specific components that you had to go down and dig into.
Yeah.
In a general, I guess, standard Amazon type consumption model,
Yes.
you have so many abstraction models. Did you ever get this level of detail or visibility to what's underneath the covers?
Depends on contracts, NDAs, and willingness to share. If I'm the enterprise and I'm going to buy cloud services, what kind of transparency? Trust is a word. We discussed that a lot. What kind of transparency do I need? I have news for you. You need absolute transparency. Otherwise, you take the risk, accountability, and the whole shebang. So then you're not in a good place. You just keep off. Might be cheap. Just do either some research, which is not fabrication, you know, which is not holding patient data, which is not. So do office things. The office things. Buy the $1 cloud items. This is all premium. This takes at least a year. If you say I have a piece of environment, I have some guys sitting, I have a little management stack, blah 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 blah. I want to qualify this. I want to make this pharma compliant. You want to take a year,
So it would be
just to start somewhere.
a private enterprise cloud.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to buy this stuff off the shelf.
I haven't seen it.
Amazon or Google, can you?
Sorry?
Can you audit some of the public clouds?
Depends on what you think audits could be.
Well, pulling one of your records and going out and verifying that.
No, I haven't seen it happen. That's a no-no. You get an email with no. We do so much business, we don't need your question.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys? I can go to future work and questions. For the slide deck, so this is practical. This is really what I've done and wanted to share. And now Brian, they asked me, so I'm very privileged to be here. Thank you. And if you want to hit me on email, I'll try to answer. I will, but I'll try to answer. And for the rest, I've put in some references for, you know, some other acronyms and all that good stuff. So, yeah, for your for later reading, anything. Thank you very much.